Hi, I'm Doug, your tech support representative here at Atlantic British. In this video we're going to touch base on a common problem that arises in the D2s from 1999 to 2004, which is the front window regulator and the front window power motor. Now, in many cases, and you can usually tell if you've got a regulator that's gone bad, you activate the window, you'll actually hear the motor run, but the window doesn't move, or you hear a banging going on from inside, and that's basically because one of the links has come apart and is banging around in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to install one, and we do stock both the front left and front right regulators and the motors. We also stock a tool that will help you in taking the door trim off, which is our W107T panel popper. So if you don't have one of these tools and you want to get into this job, you want to make sure you order one of these. So now we're going to show you how to actually install that regulator. Alright, before we get into taking the panel off, just a quick rundown. We did have a panel popper that we're going to use to take the panel off the door, a cordless screwdriver. You want a Phillips bit with a long extension because two of the screws on the bottom are set deep inside, and then probably a very long small straight blade screwdriver, and that's going to come in handy with taking the electrical connection off the motor. So what we're going to do essentially is take the Phillips screws out from the two on the door handle. There's one behind this handle right here. You can pop the bezel out once you've taken the screw out, and then there are 4 Phillips screws along the bottom. We're just going to take all those out, and then we're going to show you how to pop this off without doing any damage. Now, another tool that might make this a little bit easier is a small magnet. You can buy these in just about any automotive center. And because of the screws along the bottom are so deep into the panel, they don't always pop out, and you don't want to lose them when you go to take the panel out. So the magnet will just grab the head of the screw and take it right out of the hole. It's also going to come in very handy when we go to put this panel back on. Alright, so we've taken the screws out, we've taken the bezel out, and now next is we're going to take the panel out. And this is just a pop-in once you've taken all the screws out. Before we go to pull the panel, we're going to get in underneath this belt molding. We're going to lift up just a little bit. Doesn't have to come up a lot. And what that's going to do is when we go to put this door back on, and it just clips in there, and you want to be a little careful. You'll see it actually bends up a little bit when you do it, but just as easily you can tap it right back down. So we'll start up here in the driver's corner. You can see basically this just pops right out. Now this door panel has been off before, so this is going to come off a little bit easier than yours might. You might need to get in behind it, but once you do, we'll work our way around. Now, don't let the panel drop, because you have the door lock knob comes up through the top, plus you have your 2 wires that connect to your speakers. And there we're just going to separate the 2 tabs so we can pull that connector out of there. And you got just a little lock tab on there, so you can just grab the connector and just give it a quick snap, and that one will come off. We'll lower this down. And we can unplug the lower speaker, and now we can take the panel and move it right out of the way. Now, what you're going to end up doing before we go to put this back together, you'll see that these are a type of clip that has a horseshoe design on top, and it clips onto this ring that's embedded in part of the door panel. So what we're going to have to do is take these clips all the way around and keep an eye on, see where they're missing. You're going to find it probably either in the door panel or maybe missing the clip. There's one right there, there's one right there. We're going to need to pop those off and put them in the missing areas. So the next item we come across now is your moisture barrier that's put behind the door panel. Now, you can do it one of several ways. If you're the patient type, you can sit here and just very carefully peel this away. The butane will release, it'll stay on that cover, and just slowly work your way around. If you're doing this outside and it's a cold day, I can tell you that's not going to come off there. That butane will turn up so stiff there'll no way you'll get it out. So the other way around that is to come in at maybe about 3 or 4 inches. You can start above these 2 bolts and cut the plastic so that you can then take it and fold it up. When we're done, lay it back down, and you can either use a good duct tape or good sealing tape to reattach it. You can go either route. So once we get that up, then we're going to have access to these two bolts, center bolt, and then the top and bottom bolt we're just going to loosen. You can see that you've got a slotted hole into an enlarged area, so that all you need to do is loosen those. Then you're going to pop the regulator up and take the whole thing out the bottom. Alright, so you see now that I've opted for the cutaway, and we've raised the glass to the point where we can now see these two bolts right here. And what this is going to do is unfasten the regulator from the glass itself. Now you want to give this a real close inspection. You have a steel bar that's essentially wrapped around the bottom of the glass and is pinched onto the glass and epoxied. If you can see an imprint where it looks like the glass is moving in this bar, or if the bar is heavily corroded, I have actually had to replace some of these where the glass separated from the bar because the bar simply rusted out. These top seals are not 100% sealed. Moisture can get in. If you live in an area with high salt and whatnot, you can end up getting a rotted bar. So you want to inspect that. If that's in really bad shape, you stop at this point, order yourself a replacement glass. It's the only way you can get it. That bar is not a replaceable item. So just a little forewarning. So now we're just going to loosen those two bolts. We can take this bottom bar and slide it over. We're not going to take them out completely. We don't need to. What we're going to do is loosen them and then back them off maybe 1 or 2 turns. Now, once we've done this, and we've disconnected the regulator from the glass is essentially going to be floating free. Then what we'll do is grab it and pull this up, and that takes the glass out of the way. Now this one is fairly tight. In some cases the glass may float where it'll keep dropping on you. Then just take a piece of duct tape and go up one side of the glass over the top of the frame and to the other side, and that'll lock it in place, keep it down from coming on your hands while you're doing that regulator. So now we're back down here, and as I said, we've got 3 bolts that come out, and the 2 we're just going to loosen. No, I'm sorry, it is 4 bolts. There's 2 for the side rail. We can even loosen this up as we go along. This one we're just going to loosen. You can tell because it's got the large hole next to it, which you're going to slide over to. And the top one as well. Loosen it and then back off 2 or 3 full turns. The front bolt. And then we'll show you how to get to that electrical connection. So I've dropped the regulator a little bit just so that we have a view of the connector, which is right here, and this is for the motor. It's kind of an odd design, and essentially what you need to do is lift this tab where I've placed the screwdriver, and once you've lifted it, it pops right off. So now we've got, you can see the regulator's down, it's right there in front of you. It'll come out the bottom hole of the door, and we're going to lay it out for you, and we'll show you how to replace the motor. So we have the regulator out. Just in case you want to know, you can actually lift the whole regulator assembly halfway up into the door, put it so the motor end down, hold the 2 arms that are going to be floating around on that, and you can actually slide the motor out, and then we're going to just reverse that process to put it back in. So to replace the motor, we got to flip that over, and we have the 3 bolts right here. Fortunately, there's no spring loading, nothing's going to come apart on you. You can actually just remove the motor at that point, and then if you are installing a new one, you lay the new one in place. You don't have to worry about timing the system takes care of it by itself because it looks for the load on the motor to determine what is full open and what's full closed. So this is a relatively very easy, this is simply a Torx head, 3 Torx head bolts. Remove the bolts, the motor drops. It'll come out from this side. The new motor you're going to set in place. You're going to make sure that the center pin is lined up with the hole properly in the regulator, and you're going to make sure that the gears are fully engaged and that the motor is seated fully on the regulator before you put the bolts back in and tighten it. If you don't have it lined up with the gears properly and you try to force those 3 bolts in, you're going to end up breaking the gear in the motor. Alright, I'm going to show you why in most cases these fail. And it has nothing to do with the metal bracketry, that's all good. There are nylon rollers on pins that run through these channels, which is what this rolls on to raise the window up and down. You'll see here that this one has a white roller on the end there that keeps that within this channel. Here you have the white roller missing. What has happened is it's either come apart, shattered, dried out, split, whatever the case may be. It fell out of there. So now the arm is able to drop out of the channel and not guide the window properly. So there's mostly the cause of our failures. Now, when you go to transfer your regulator over, you'll see this plastic guard right here, which you can simply remove by this Phillips screw right here. You can see the hole is already drilled in the channel here. You're going to do the same. We'll flip that over, put this in the same orientation that it is on the original, and then we'll be set to exchange the motor and put the unit back in the door. Alright, so the 3 bolts we're going to remove, we're going to transfer this motor over, or in any case, should you be replacing the motor, you can reuse the 3 bolts to install the new one. It's a number 30 Torx head. I'm just going to set that in there. We'll take the 3 bolts out. And you can see that you have a pin right here. This is part of the motor, and that's going to ride in this hole right here. And like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you're centered in that hole and that the gears are fully engaged. Just to show you how things are oriented before we slide this back up in place. We have our motor in, it's down. Now on that pin on the other side that I mentioned, probably wouldn't even hurt before you put it back in, put a little spot of grease in there. That'll just add to the longevity of the motor and the regulator. Never hurts to put a little grease on a spinning shaft. So we can fold this up flat, and as I said, the way it came out was oriented like so. And what we're going to do essentially is slide it up and like so, halfway up into the door, bring it straight down. And at this point, before you even put it in, if you remember, you had 2 bolts here that had access and didn't need to be removed, but just loosened. So we're going to put those 2 bolts into the new regulator first. And as you can see, being they're already still there, we can use the old one to reference exactly what holes to put these into. Alright, so now we're back up inside the door. Don't forget to plug this electrical connection in. This slides in from the front. You'll hear it click as it lays up in place. And we sort of feel around up in there so that we can locate those 2 bolts that we already have started in there. Alright, so just so you know, it does take a little bit of juggling because you're going to have this channel floating around, you're going to have this channel floating around. But if you hold everything together, get it up in place, and you can see we'll get the 2 in there. And this is a nice feature because it'll allow it to, you've got it in place to rest. Now you can start attaching the rest of the hardware. And you'll still need to put your hand in behind there just to get these 2 bolts lined up. And just twist it a little bit. And this will basically lock down the main frame and the mounting of the where the motor is. And then you've got the small channel in the back. And we'll start the bolts into that. You can reach in through here and you'll eventually find the hole there. So once you have them all started, we're just going to lock them all down and then we're going to have to, then we'll attach the glass. So we've lowered the window back down to pretty much the same position it was in when we first detached it from the original regulator. Now you take the bottom channel, we're going to pop the bolts in, which we've already done, just through the opening holes, and then you're just going to slide it over so that the narrow end of the slot is now behind the bolt. And when we lock the bolt down, now that attaches the window to the regulator. From this point, basically, we've installed the regulator. This is done. Now all we need to do now is put the door panel back on and run it all the way up and all the way down so the system realizes where full up and full down is, and you'll be ready to go. Alright, it's always a good idea to test your window operation just to make sure everything's plugged in right before you go putting the panel back on. So we're going to lower it all the way. But now's a good opportunity if you have a little dry silicone spray or whatnot to spray the door channels and whatnot, so it makes it easier for this glass to go up and down. We'll go to full up. And we're fully operational. So we're going to take some duct tape, we're going to seal off this area of the moisture barrier that we cut off, and then we'll put the panel back on. Alright, so now we're ready to put the panel back on. First step, obviously, we got to remember to plug our stereo speakers back in. We've got one plug in on the bottom, small one up top, and then pop it back in that little clip just to hold it in place. Now, we talked about these little plastic studs when we pulled the door off, that some of these get left in the door. We do stock these, so if you plan on replacing these, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to order the full number that you would need. There's going to be about 10 of them all the way around the door. I'm sure you're going to break a few, you're going to lose a few, you're going to bend a few, so it's a good idea. Maybe get a few ahead of time. So you're going to put your door lock lever up inside, lay that in place, and then kind of feel it into position. And remember, we lifted that top belt molding. You can actually peek in the side to see where your clips are lined up. And again, a little bit of a juggling act, but it'll go. Now remember too, don't worry about it if it feels a little loose or shaky, it will. That'll all lock in very well once you put all the screws back in on the door panel. And then once you're done with that, we'll take our tool, we'll tap down the belt molding so it's flush against the trim, try to smooth it out, and I think we'll be good at that point. Alright, so we're going to put all our screws back in here, pop our bezel in. Now with the bezel, you'll see you'll have basically a horizontal slot. So what you'll need to do is you open the door handle, put the bezel upright, put it onto the handle, spin it, and pop it in place, and all you got to do is put the screw in. So now we're going to reinstall all the screws. That little tip I gave earlier about the magnet, you'll find that these holes sit quite deep and it's hard to get your finger in there, and you can't spin it, and it's a little hard to balance with a screwdriver and set it. So a little trick is you can actually put the screw right on the end of the magnet, and if you're lined up, it's not going to screw it all the way in, but it's at least going to start it, and you'll know it's been started when you pull the screw away or the magnet away and the screw is left in the hole, so you know it's grabbed onto the nut. So then from that point you're just going to run it in. So let's just put all the screws back in, and we'll be all set. So we have our door panel back on, everything's nice and tight and in place, so all the screws are back on, our 2 in the handle, 1 in the bezel, and then 4 on the bottom. Pop the top in, we push that piece of molding back down, our door handle or our door lock knob is moving nice and free, and our window goes up and down as she should with no bad noise or movement, so we are set to go. So you'll notice it really didn't take a lot of time. You really didn't need a lot of tools to do it. Basically a very easy do-it-yourself project, and you don't realize how much you want that window to go up and down when it doesn't work. So when you're ready to fix your non-working window on your Discovery 2, call any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210, and thanks for watching.